Where does the Steelers head coaching search sit, Tom?
They're with Anthony Weaver right now, Dolphins defensive coordinator. Everywhere that Anthony Weaver, and he's been in the cycle now 3 or 4 times, everywhere that Weaver interviews, I remember he interviewed in Atlanta at one time, he interviewed in Washington. Everyone who interviews him says he's unbelievable. He's a former player, has coached in the league for a number of years, but also played, including with the Ravens, who interviewed him for their head coaching job. Very, very engaging, has strong leadership traits, will need a strong staff around him. But you can say that for a lot of young coaches within the league. If you think of what the Steelers' historical hiring patterns have been, Weaver's a little bit older. He's in his 40s. Usually they've hired guys in their mid 30s to be the head coach and then try to keep them for 15 to 20 or more years. But Weaver, fills a lot of those things that generally the Rooney family has been looking for. But I would also say Mike McCarthy remains a serious candidate. He had his interview in person for the job on Wednesday. Pittsburgh guy, this would be his dream job. He grew up rooting for the Steelers. Mike McCarthy brings something different to the table that I think virtually any other candidate for any job in this cycle, which is the quarterback development history. If eventually you are needing, whether it's Will Howard or somebody you're drafting, you're going to have to develop a young quarterback. And everywhere Mike McCarthy has been, from being in Kansas City and bringing along Rich Gannon into the second act of his career, Brett Favre, who had a down period in Green Bay, and he was a MVP runner-up in 2007. Aaron Rodgers going from a guy who did not look good in his first preseason in the league to being a 4-time NFL MVP. And Dak Prescott played the best football of his life under Mike McCarthy. I'll never understand, Rich, the slight that Mike McCarthy takes in terms of not being put in that same category as the guys with almost identical resumes to him, the Tomlins and Sean Paytons and John Harbaughs of the world. McCarthy's a very serious candidate in Pittsburgh for a reason, and they still may choose to go on longer because, again, Art Rooney has not presided over a coaching search yet, and given how rarely the Steelers do one, this may be the only one that that he does before he passes it down to the next generation of the family. They may take their time here. They could make a decision as soon as tomorrow. I would think, if I were guessing, this goes into next week, which would allow them to go back and spend some in-person time, potentially with, for instance, Chris Shula and Nate Scheelhaus, 2 guys that they interviewed in that first virtual round.
Well, answering the question you just had moments ago, Tom, about why McCarthy's not placed in a much higher level of respect by media members or owners for another job outside of Jerry Jones, there was that damaging article after he got fired midseason by the Packers that Rodgers was calling plays on his own because he didn't trust McCarthy's play calling anymore. There was all that crazy stuff about how prepared McCarthy was for games itself. Whether that's right or wrong, that's a narrative that's tough to break up to the point where we have time for it now. You kind of surprised us on a Monday conversation. We were out of time when you said that Rodgers could potentially come back to Pittsburgh if they hire McCarthy. So those two are copacetic, Tom?
Those two have a relationship that transcends the professional relationship, which I think, like plenty of them, if you're around anyone long enough, you become so comfortable that you can be contentious with them at times. I mean, with Aaron Rodgers, he knows what Mike McCarthy has done for his career. He has spoken publicly about that. And, when Mike was let go, encouraged people in Green Bay to give him the type of send-off that, frankly, he didn't really get from the Packers organization when they fired him an hour after a game at Lambeau Field. Those two spent time together the first time that, Mike with the Cowboys went back and faced Aaron. They've always had a long-standing positive relationship. I do believe that if Aaron Rodgers were coming back to play for one coach in 2026, it would be Mike McCarthy. But I think that people may have misconstrued when I mentioned that on the show the other day as, well, this is the Steelers trying to lure back Aaron Rodgers. That's not it at all. If they hire Mike McCarthy, and that's not a given, if they hire Mike McCarthy, they are doing it for the totality of what direction they think that they can go right now. They've got a very, very veteran roster. Art Rooney has said publicly he never wants to rip it to the studs and go full tank mode and just take a season off. He feels like every season is too important for that. So if you were sitting there going, what do we need to push this roster forward? Yes, there's going to be some changes. There are some longtime Mike Tomlin guys who probably aren't going to be back on this team. But why not get a guy whose track record has been winning everywhere that he has been. McCarthy's been to the playoffs 12 times in 18 seasons. He's developed quarterbacks. If you look at the offensive numbers, he's had very good offenses throughout the course of his career. The potential of an Aaron Rodgers return is just, it's kind of a bonus. It at least keeps that door open where if there's another coach who has no relationship with Aaron Rodgers, he might just say, I've had enough. And I know that, there were several different things that were written at the time. I think that any time that you have these long-time relationships that begin to go south, there's people who, may have axes to grind, or they, simply aren't happy anymore. Aaron has always been somebody who, he'll say certain things and he'll take his little shots, and that's just his personality. But in terms of where their relationship is now, I think that in itself speaks to how overblown, the frankly hate toward Mike McCarthy has gotten. I mean, I don't know what more you want to get out of your head coach than, being in the mix every single year. Yeah, you want to win playoff games. Mike McCarthy's won more playoff games than any active coach, except for Andy Reid and John Harbaugh. He's got more playoff wins than Mike Tomlin, than Sean Payton, than the younger guys like McVay and Shanahan, who obviously have a long way to go. Mike McCarthy's been a highly successful, coach in the NFL. The Cowboys, since their last Super Bowl win, Rich, have exactly 6 seasons of 12 wins or more. 3 of those were by McCarthy in a 5-year span. It's baffling to me how Mike McCarthy gets put into this bucket of not being in the same tier as those other coaches, which, frankly, Mike's not immune to it. And it's one of many reasons that he'd be highly motivated, not to mention the fact that, he grew up sweeping the floors at his dad's bar and grill in Pittsburgh and cheering for the Steelers on Sundays. To go back after coaching the Packers and the Cowboys and take on maybe the 3rd most iconic franchise in all of football would be pretty cool.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.